Welcome back to Leeds Lately for another episode of Dream Teams. This time it is my turn to be in the guest seat, and I will be going through my favourite Leeds 11. That's favourite, not best. This series, of course, inspired by James Alcott's Dream Team series. A link down for that will be in the description. But first of all, Joe, how are you doing? You're going to be my interviewer today, but how are you?
I'm good, Max. I'm good. I'm looking forward to this. I've been watching this series for the entirety of the series, and I'm really keen to see what your team looks like. Haven't got all the information from everybody else and all their favorite players to see. Has that sculpted what your team will look like? So I'm excited to see this. How are you?
Yes, I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, it may have slightly influenced, but today I'm just looking forward to not having to talk about current leads, and for that
Yeah.
to be a little bit of a respite. But yeah, this is going to kind of round off the series with episode 10. There may be future episodes, but for now, this is going to be just the 10 episodes, which you can go back and look through. There's plenty of content. In fact, there's about 10 hours worth of content for you to watch if you haven't seen them already. But yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
Great then. Well, then let's get into as Max has already said. This is Max's favorite players that played for Leeds over history, not the best players. We'll re-emphasize that as well. Max, we start off as you've always started off. We start off with your system, and what is the system that this team is going to play?
Well, it's kind of a 4-3-3, but it's a holding midfielder, a number 8 who can defend and go forward, and a bit of a player to sit in front of them who to be more of a little bit of a number 10. But people will see that when it comes up on the screen. It's a 4-3-3, but with just a bit of a variation on it.
Okay, all right. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do with a 4-3-3. Can be a 4-5-1 out of possession when you want to be more defensive. You can do that as well. Has lots of different options that you can do with that system as well. So good system, interesting system, and can be a very attacking system as well. We'll start off with your goalkeeper, Max. Who's going to be the man policing the back four for you?
Yeah, this one is we're starting with one that I've actually kind of barely watched. Nigel Martyn is somebody who everybody has talked about in this series as being one of the best Leeds goalkeepers of all time, and I was born in 97. Nigel Martyn left in 2003. So obviously being 6 years old, I don't really ever remember watching him at the time. I've seen clips of him since, but it's more about sort of childhood memories. And Nigel Martyn was one of the first sort of names I heard associated with Leeds because my older brother was a little goalkeeper for his little junior team, and I wanted to be a goalkeeper too because of that. And Nigel Martyn was one of the first shirts. I can't remember which one of us it was, but one of us got a Nigel Martyn shirt, the black goalkeeper shirt, strongbow on it from, I'm sure it was like 2002, 2003 or something like that.
Champions League semi-final year. That was the year we wore the all-white kit with the strongbow on it as well.
That's 2002.
About 2002, I'd say, yeah, roughly 2001,
Yeah. So
2002.
that was a nice kit, and that was like I say, one of my first childhood memories being linked to Leeds is that Nigel Martyn shirt and wanting to replicate him, even though I hadn't really seen him play. But yeah, from what I've heard as well and what I've seen of the clips of him, excellent goalkeeper, good shot stopper, good distributor, or distributor even, and yeah, he's widely regarded as one of the best Leeds goalkeepers of all time. So he kind of has to be in there just for that kind of initial link to Leeds and that first sort of discovering of Leeds players.
It's interesting that I think everybody has picked Nigel Martyn. I think maybe,
a few
Robinson was
people that
picked by
haven't, yeah.
Robbo's there. So that era though of goalkeepers, those two were fighting for the number 1 shirt around the same time as well. And Robinson
Yeah.
ultimately replaced Martin. But it's very interesting to see. Probably the best keeper Leeds have had him. If you look at what people have said about him, I think different generations have kind of said the same thing. Probably the last really, really, really good goalkeeper Leeds had. Good strong start, Max. That's a solid start to your defense. Who's going to pop in at right back?
So this one is also quite a popular pick, and it's Sam Byram. And I think there's a lot of nostalgia tied to it. Like when I first was able to watch a little bit of Leeds, because we didn't really have Sky Sports growing up, and it was a bit of a trek to get to Elland Road, and it's an expensive day out. So I didn't actually get to watch Leeds that much. But you heard about certain players coming through, and Sam Byram's one who it's like you come through the academy and you're instantly a fan favorite. And he was good back then, and he's come back now, which has cemented it even more. And I get to watch him now. He's older. Now he's more mature. Now his game's developed. And I think he's great. I love the way he plays. I love the way he's defensively strong. He's good at going forward. He wins headers. He's just a very good defender. He's quite an old-fashioned defender in the fact that he is good at going forward and getting back as well. We talked about Gary Kelly in some people's episodes. I think you talked about him specifically, didn't you? And and he had that to be able to go forward and get back. Obviously, Sam Byram's not as good of a player as Gary Kelly, but Sam Byram was the sort of player who can go forward and get back as well, which you don't get with many fullbacks nowadays. It's either one or the other. So yeah, I think the fact that he came through the academy, so then he obviously instantly is a fan favorite. He left, but now he's finally come back and he's playing again, and seems to be enjoying his football. He's going at right back, which is where he came through originally, isn't it? Not a left back, because we've got somebody else in at left back. So Byram sits out on that right hand side at right back. I think he's been hampered massively by injuries in his career as well. I think he could have gone on to so much more if he hadn't been. I think he had a high ceiling, but injuries have just really slowed that down.
I think you could have seen a fullback at Gary Kelly's level there when he first broke through, had he avoided injuries for the bulk of his career. But the injuries have had a huge toll on him. To have a fullback that is, as all the things that you've said, but can also comfortably play on the left-hand side or dip in at centre-back as well. Pretty much a complete defender across the board, but very, very adept at getting forward and creating chances as well. So a good, exciting player to have, especially in a 4-3-3 where you're going to need some width around the outside at times as well. It's good to have that player that can get up and down the park on either side. So, yeah, that's a really interesting start as well. I saw a lot of Sam Byram. I was over in Leeds a lot that year when he was making his breakthrough. And, yeah, he had the same excitement that Gary Kelly had when he broke through. So, yeah, another solid, strong start to this. Who's going to go in at your right centre-back, Max?
So this one's another one from the sort of the Championship era, but the early Bielsa years and maybe a little bit before that as well. But Pontus Jansson, there's just something about Jansson where he was just a player I loved. It was at the time he came in at the time where I sort of started to take a lot more of an interest back in Leeds again, and really start to learn about the way that football was actually played and things like that. And I loved Jansson because he was just passionate, strong, good defender, won every header. There's obviously the song about him heading a brick back at you. With some more profanities in there, but he was fantastic. I loved Jansson. I loved the passion that he had. I loved the fact that he could actually play as well. He was a decent footballer. Obviously went to Brentford and eventually got to the Premier League and played some time in the Premier League. But Jansson, I thought, was somebody who, yes, he's not the best defender we've had in our history, but he was full of passion. He was full of pride. He really wanted to play for the shirt. And I was happy with him as our centre-back at the time. I was really happy for him to be in there and to be such a strong defensive partner for whoever's next to him, and a leader as well. And I love a leader, and that's probably going to show throughout this team.
He was definitely a do as I do kind of leader, run through brick walls. He had good partnerships pretty much with anybody that played beside him, whether it was Kyle Bartley or Liam Cooper or whoever it was. And then beside him, they had good partnerships, and again, during some of the not so good times at Leeds, he was one of the brighter lights that Leeds had at that time as well. And did get his chance in the Premier League, which was great for him as well. That's a strong start, Max. That's a good, you said leadership. That's a strong back line of players that have captained.
Yeah, and I think
already you've got three. You've got three that have captained this team there now as well. So Jansson's good. Yeah. Who goes in the left centre back, Max? I'm interested to see.
Well, I think this is going to continue that trend because, again, it's somebody who I never really watched growing up, but since have heard about and watched and enjoyed and just love everything about the bloke. It's the Chief, Lucas Radebe, in at left centre back. He's kind of the last one of players where I didn't really watch them too much. But he just sums up Leeds United, doesn't he? He came over, people weren't expecting that much of him, and he just smashed it. And he was a leader. When people say captain, leader, legend, it's just Lucas Radebe, isn't it? Says a lot that he was Nelson Mandela's favourite player or favourite sportsman in general. And in that time, obviously, he came in 1995, 2 years before I was born, and 2005 he left, so I was about 8 years old. So I don't really remember him, but I just remember the name and him being a household name with all Leeds fans and just being such a leader, so vocal, so strong, such a good player as well. And the way everybody's talked about him so far has just cemented that in my mind, that he's just the type of player where you just put him in your team every day of the week, wouldn't you?
An absolute Rolls Royce who glided across the turf was how I described him. Read the game better than anybody, could play football at a time when it was only really kind of starting to be a thing where people wanted to get the ball on the deck. He could do that. Yeah, he was brilliant. Probably from in my lifetime, probably the best centre back we've ever had. And again, he wasn't meant to be. He was supposed to be Phil Mazinga's mate, and he ended up outshining Phil Mazinga and everybody else for a long period of time. And the fact that he never left as well, never left to go to another Premier League club when he had plenty of options, especially to go to Manchester United, and he turned it down, said he'd never play for them. So there's a lot of things about Lucas Radebe that endear him to Leeds.
A lot of
United
ticks
fans.
in those boxes. Yeah.
Oh, that's what you want to be a legend at Leeds. You checked all the boxes. You've checked every single one of them. So, and Absolutely. The fact that he did it at a time when Leeds had a really good side and were competing at the top level in Europe as well. So, not an easy thing to do, but absolute Rolls Royce of a centre back. This is a really good back line. I'm liking the look of this. Left back will make it or break it for you, Max. Who have you got sliding in at left back?
This time left back, and no, I don't think anybody else has put him in their team so far. Maybe one person, I can't remember, but for me, it's got to be Stuart Dallas. I love Stuart Dallas, and he's the ultimate utility man. He can play anywhere you ask him to, and I love him. The passion that he has, the ability to play in all those positions, to be so adaptable, to play at left back, to play at right back, to play in midfield, anywhere you want him to. I put him at left back because this team were going to want the fullbacks going high and joining the attack, and I think he's another one who's very good at doing that, coming on the left hand side and overlapping. I nearly gave away who the winger was then, but overlapping that winger and helping him out, and or underlapping even in certain situations. I think he had the ability to, because he'd played as a midfielder and a left midfielder and a right midfielder for a lot of his early years as a footballer, he's able to then play that wing back role so well, because when he gets forward, he is basically already trained to be a winger or a wide midfielder. So, and again, he's one of those ones where it's not necessarily lead by do as I say, he's do as I do as well. He's definitely a lead by example kind of player, and I think he exemplifies everything the Leeds fan wants. Just go out there and give your all, and we'll be happy with you. And that's what he did every week.
Says a lot, doesn't it? Just effort alone can do an awful lot for your career at Leeds United, especially with our fan base. Also, there's that saying, jack of all trades, master of none. I think Stuart Dallas breaks that. Every time he's gone into a position, he's made it his own, and he's had no problem doing it. So very much a master of all trades and jack of all as well. He's been brilliant for Leeds. It's a real shame what's happened to him with the injuries, but a joy to watch of a player, an absolute pro, gentleman on and off the park, and hard as nails when it needs to be. It takes an awful lot to break your femur. That tells you how hard he goes.
Car crash injury, isn't it?
Car crash, yeah. So it's it tells you how much he puts into the game, and how much he cares about the club.
But his teammates have said as well, haven't they, that he played so many games with an injury, and he just kept going and just did it anyway, and he lasted so long, and then it took a car crash style leg break for him to not play for Leeds, which is sums up the man, doesn't it? Hopefully he gets back to his best. I don't know if he will, but I'd love to see him get back to his best, because also he just gives us an option at left back, doesn't he, when we've been struggling so much. So I mean, I love Stuart Dallas. I think he's great, and I would have him in my team any day of the week.
Yeah, I love him. I fear we might not see him play again, but I love him, and I hope he gets back to playing. Even 50% of the level he was at would still be a very good player. So fingers crossed for Dally. Right then, that's your defense. That's a good defense and goalkeeper. Moving into midfield, who is going to be your 6 or your CDM in this system?
It has to be Calvin Phillips. I mean, I've got his shirt. You can't see it on this, but I've got his shirt up on the wall there, signed. I love Calvin Phillips. I always say how that position is one of my favorite positions of all, like ever on a football field, is that number 6 position, that holding midfield position. Somebody who tough tackling, but then also has the quality to look up and play a ball over the top 40, 50, 60 yards and just drop onto someone's foot. And Calvin had that in spades when he played for Leeds. He was always able to win the ball back. So many tackles where he just slides in and wins the ball back. The player goes flying and he's still got the ball at his feet, Calvin. And we've talked about before as well how nowadays most teams play with 2 holding midfielders, and they need to be able to cover that whole section of the pitch between the midfield and the defense. But Calvin did it on his own for Bielsa. He did that whole section of the pitch, and he was so good at it. I love the bloke. I'd love him to come back to Leeds one day. I would love him to. I'm not sure if he ever will, but I mean, can see it. I can see it happening maybe one day towards the end of his career or something. But I think he just, again, sums up exactly what it means to be Leeds, and I think he's fantastic and was a great servant to the club, getting us back to the Premier League.
A lot of other good stuff with him as well. Range of passing, especially in that deep lying role with three. You need somebody in that quarterback. Calvin ticks that box perfectly. Probably his best position is when he's responsible for that quarterback role. Can drop in between the two centre backs and cover if he needs to. He did that comfortably under Bielsa as well. Can step out with the ball as well. Can spray those passes, and he can take set pieces as well, which Leeds have lacked probably since him and Rafinha left Leeds. So you've got a huge range with him there as well. And again, that passion for the club as well. I mean, you've got a very clear trend appearing here. You've got players in that care about this club and had passion for this club when they played there. So you're getting that raw passion that Leeds fans love to have. So that's a very good trait to have, just laced between the whole squad so far. It's really, really good. What's your best moment of Calvin Phillips? What's your standout moment?
Well, there's obviously he scored on the centenary, didn't he, in that special centenary shirt, and that was nice. But I don't know if there's particularly one to pick out. I think I just loved watching him every week. I just loved seeing him walk out onto the. I would have loved him to be captain, but he never really got that. He did it once or twice, didn't he? But he never really got that chance to do it on a regular basis. But I don't even think there's one particular moment that I would pick out. I think it's just in general the just watching him ping passes around. That's my abiding memory of just him picking up the ball and just sending a ball right over to the left wing or to the right wing and just going, like, every time I go, oh, nice, well done, every single time. And I just remembering him slide in, make a tackle, get the ball, and then ping passes around. And I love that. I think also the Euros sticks out for me of the way he played, getting England to the final of the Euros, winning player of the tournament, playing in the number 8 role, going forward as well, and getting an assist for, I think it was Sterling against Croatia. And I just think the fact that, I mean, obviously he owes his career almost to Bielsa, the way he came in and changed his position. And we've talked about that before, so we won't go into too much detail. But the fact that he was a number 8 before and Bielsa just said, no, you're a holding midfielder for me. And the way his, career's gone up until the point he's sort of on hold at Man City. But I love Calvin. I would pick him every day of the week.
He was very close to my team. He was very close. But again, I'd older players there that I'd seen.
You've got a different era to pick from, haven't you, really?
But
and
he was
that was a better era.
It was a much better era. Okay, let's talk about your number 8. Who's your box to box?
It's going to be Johnny Howson. Now, the reason I've gone for Johnny Howson is because he's quite a big bloke. He's physical. He can tackle and he can pass. And so he's kind of almost Calvin, but a bit further forward. And so the reason I wanted him to play in that number 8 is because when he needs to, he's very capable hands dropping in next to Calvin Phillips as a holding midfielder. But he had such a good passing range. And even when we've watched him this season, when we played against Middlesbrough, his ability to pass the ball is still brilliant. Like, obviously, that's one of the things that doesn't really go with age, isn't it? Your ability to pass the ball. But the way he would pick the ball up, he always found himself in space. He always has time on it. And I think that's due to his intelligence, his football intelligence of knowing where to drop, what pockets to drop into where he's not marked. And then when he receives the ball, he looks up quickly, and he always had people ahead of him, and he always picked them out with a nice pass. And he was also able to get forward in his early days when he was at Leeds. He scored, I think, 29 goals for Leeds. So he got forward and got into the box and got on the end of things as well. So that shows his ability to be that number 8 of going forward as well. So I think he's that perfect number 8 at the time, where you want him to go forward and you want him to get back, and you can do both of them just as well as each other. I don't have massive amounts of memories from watching him, but I remember also it was kind of the first sort of era where I was able to get into Leeds a little bit more. And even then, though, I only got to really watch us in the cups because it was on BBC and ITV or whatever. So those little moments, that's when I saw people like Johnny Howson and was like, because he's Leeds through and through. It was another one where, again, they love the club and they've come through and played for the first team, and it's like, I'll take a Johnny Howson all day.
Yeah, he had a smashing engine as well. Like, he could get about the park. Carlisle United always stands out in my memory. He scored first in Carlisle in the semis of the playoffs in League One, maybe one year. I think it was or on the way to the playoffs.
Yeah.
He scored in a big goal in there. He scored big goals, and again, another set piece taker as well. Was very good with deliveries. I thought he was very good when we played Middlesbrough this year, even though he is in his 30s now and at the back end of his career, he could still run the show. He's a very intelligent footballer. Can still do a job for a lot of teams at this level. But yeah, that's another very solid shout. Right then, we'll bypass. We'll do your 10. We'll do your 10. So
yeah,
who
because
is
he's
going to
kind
be
of behind the front three.
Behind
It has to be Pablo, because I mean, he's up there with the best players I've ever seen play for Leeds in terms of his impact. And towards the end of the promotion season, he was just. I mean, there's a reason they call him El Maggio. He was magical towards the end of that season. He just always found a way, and it's something that we lack so much now. Is somebody who can just play a ball through a defender's legs into the box. When you're a team that's trying to break down a low block and play against teams that are sitting back in, you need somebody who can pick the ball in that position between the midfield and the attack, and somebody who can squeeze the ball into the box. Because a lot of the time, it looks like, okay, well, there's no way through here. If we try and pass it into the striker and behind, they're just going to cut it out. But he always managed to somehow get it through their legs, or he would be running across the box, like away from the box like that, and then, do like the reverse, like cut back pass, or like cut it that way. And that's when the players are always off, like their weight is on the foot that is going away from the ball then. So then by the time they've gone like that, put the weight on, pushed it back off to go the other way, the ball's already gone through into the box. And because the Leeds players are expecting it a bit more, that's when they were able to break down low blocks. And that's why I think that's one of the reasons why we got promoted, because we were able to beat teams who sat back and tried to say, right, try and get through us. Pablo was like, okay. And that's what he did. And that's what he was best at, I think.
He was the universal key to every single defense. If you needed someone to unlock it, Pablo was your man. He could do it. He was huge for Leeds, especially when he came in. Imagine getting Pablo in his peak years. I mean, we got him after his peak, and if you imagine getting him when he was 27, 28, when he was playing over in Qatar, that would have been a fantastic player to get. But he came in, the right player at the right time, under the right manager and the right set of circumstances, and it worked perfectly. A Gary Monk signing. Gary Monk doesn't get enough credit for ever at Leeds. So that's
full stop.
One of his mates that he brought in. Great to get him. Outstanding player. I think everyone's either picked him or tried to find a position to play him in, whether it was on the right hand side or 10. That tells you the impact that he's had on Leeds fans over the years as well. So huge player. A rare entity. We keep talking about what we need right now in this team, and we need a number 10 who's creative. We need a Pablo. There are so few Pablos around. That's why when you do get one, you remember them for long after they've been. Karen McAllister being another example of that as well. When you get a number 10, that's just a different level above everybody else. It stays in the memory, it stays with you. He'd be key. He'd be key to this team as well.
It's one of the most exciting players, isn't it? Yeah, it's one of the most exciting positions on the pitch. It's always like the key to unlocking defenses. And I think with somebody like Pablo in there, you've always got a chance. And that's why I've put him in there.
It's a good balanced midfield. You've got your blocker who can start moves. You've got your engine room and Johnny Howson getting around the middle, and you've got your Pablo there to be your creative force. There's a nice blend in the mix of the three you've picked in the middle there. Interesting to see how the wingers will now add to this as well, or the three front men. We'll start, Max, with your right-hand side of your front three. Who have you gone for?
I've gone for Rafinha. The reason that I said Pablo is one of the best players I've ever seen for Leeds is because I think Rafinha probably pips him in terms of the fact that it was at a higher level, because it was in the Premier League and it wasn't in the Championship. I think that's the only reason. But Rafinha, I have no words for how good that guy was. Like, when we signed him, it was like £17 million. Looked like maybe it was a little bit of a panic buy towards the end of the window. But boy, was he worth that money and tenfold more. He was unbelievable, cutting in on his left foot, curling the ball in the top corner. The one against West Brom always sticks out for me, where he just cut across and put it in the top corner. Or his first one against Everton, where he cut inside and put it in the bottom corner as well. So many goals to pick from, so many times where he rescued us in games, did stuff on his own, and then his ability to beat a man as well was like one of those things where it's just exciting to watch. And we haven't had that much in terms of somebody who actually just goes past players and beats them and actually creates opportunities out of nothing. And that's another thing that we talk about Pablo creating those chances. With somebody like Rafinha, you've always got a chance to create something as well, because he can just beat a man, which most other players wouldn't be able to do. And you just nutmeg him, go around and get it on the other side. And then you've got a chance then. So somebody like that, he always just gives you that spark, that bit of magic that could get you that chance to win the game. But he was unbelievable. And I've said before, the last Brazilian we signed was Adrian, wasn't it? So Rafinha came in with fairly low expectations, and he absolutely smashed it.
We haven't had a great track record. Roque Jr. being the last World Cup winner that we signed. You're like, oh, we got a World Cup winner. And then you figure out it's Roque Jr. and you see what happened. You wouldn't remember that, Max, but I remember.
I know the name, and I've heard the story because so many people are traumatized by it.
It was one of his famous muck-up nights. The night that he came home with half a jersey on him, ripped to pieces. I was playing a match that night. I was actually walking back into the clubhouse, and it was on the TV. And I remember just kind of glancing at it, watching it for 10 minutes, and I was going, oh, God, how did this happen? How did we get a World Cup winner and end up being him? You know, and so the bar was pretty low, Rafinha coming in. But what an impact, what a player. I would never say any one player kept Leeds in the Premier League, but he definitely had a huge hand, not only in the goals that he got, but the style of play that he gave, the worry that he gave defenses about having to keep an eye on him. You couldn't just go down the field. You couldn't leave him on his own. We saw what he did to Gary Cahill. I don't think Gary Cahill was ever the same after that. That probably a retirement flick.
Yeah.
But he, an absolute, what do you call it, lightning rod for a performance if you were struggling. And something he got better at over time as well, because at the start he did have performances where he wasn't starting well, he wasn't doing particularly well, he was in the team, and then all of a sudden, when it clicked, beautiful footballer to watch. And one of the few players that you actually look at when he got the ball would just turn and look straight at the fullback and go, right, it's me and you. And then just run straight at them and cause panic, where most players won't do that. And you even see that with the Leeds team now. They'll try and pass around the fullback into space, where Rafinha was like, give me the ball.
Yeah, that's what I've been crying out for from Nonto, because he can be that type of player. I think he's at his best when he picks the ball up, he gets his head down and he runs at someone with low center of gravity, ability to drop a shoulder and go past someone. But he just tends to go back and then turn around and play it safe and then go back to the defender and slow things down. Whereas Rafinha, the only thing he ever thought was go forward. And I'd say most times, like more times than not, he would try to go forward. And if it wasn't on you, maybe he would come back. But if it was isolated 1v1 against a fullback, he's going to go for it. And that's what you got to love about a player like that.
Yeah, you see the impact he had when he left Leeds and went to Barcelona. It's a big move. It's his dream move, but a massive club to go to. And they had a phenomenal first season there. Again, slow enough start, but when he got going, goals and assists in his game, you know, a huge help for a Barcelona side that needed that at the time as well. So, yeah, he's a dream player. I'd love to see him back in the Leeds shirt at some point in the future. You know, if we hadn't gone down, maybe we could wait and see what the future holds. But yeah, exciting player. Imagine having him, Pablo, in his prime in the same team. You know, that's
be so
really good team, Max. This is a very good team. Okay, then let's go to the far side then before we get to your striker. Let's go with your left attacking winger or your third striker. Who are you going to be?
It's Robert Snodgrass. I think much like what Rafinha was in that Jesse Marsh team, or maybe a little bit before that as well. A lot of the time it was, let's give the ball to Rafinha and see what he can do. It was a lot of the time it was give the ball to Snodgrass and see what he can do. Set piece delivery, crossing into the box, shooting, ability to go past a man. He had a lot of the things that you would tick in those boxes for a good winger. Again, passionate, really, really gave his all when he was out there. And for me, Snodgrass was just one of those players who really was a shining light in a really bad era for Leeds United. And when you had a player like that, you had something to hold on to. And that's what I liked about people like Snodgrass. You had something to hold on to. And even now, if he was in his prime, if you put him in this Leeds side in the Championship, I still think he would be up there with one of our best wingers. And I think he would still do a very, very good job. So, yeah, he kind of made his way to the Premier League. He didn't play too much there. He played a little bit, but not massive amount. But certainly in his Leeds years, he was playing some really, really good football. And I think he just complements that front line so well. Just ability to get the ball in the box and to score himself, to cut inside. I think, yeah, it just really helps everybody out in that front line, having somebody like Snodgrass there and another leader, I would say.
He captained Leeds. He did captain the team at times as well. So he was never what you'd call a fast winger. He was never blessed with incredible pace, but he always was clever enough to be able to get past people and use his body well and get in front of people. Yeah. the Ayrton Senna of football. You just, once you got in front of you, you couldn't get around the back. You couldn't get around them.
It's when somebody's not fast, it's about how they make up for it as a winger, whether they are intelligent enough to position their body right when they get past somebody and just say, look, I'm not letting you past me. You're not going to get around me to get the ball. And also the quality that he had with his delivery and his shooting and things like that. And he makes up for it in those aspects. Like, I don't want to go back too much to current times, but when you look at somebody like Jadon Anthony, I was watching him in the game against West Brom, and I've started to think, and I've said this, I don't know what he brings. He's not very good at shooting. He's not very good at crossing, and he's not very good at beating a man, and he's not very fast. So he doesn't tick any of the boxes to be a good winger. Snodgrass ticks all those boxes, bar being fast. Yeah. So he made up for it with the other ones, and his ability to be like, okay, like you say, once he gets his body in front of you, it's so hard to get past him because he's so good at shielding that ball and being able to control where the defender goes and how he manages to get an opportunity to shoot or cross. So I think Snodgrass, whilst he didn't have everything, he made up for it with how good he was in other aspects.
He was the one player that you always thought, if we just bring in 3 or 4 more players of his level around him, we'll get out of this division. You always had that as
and it just never
he's
happened.
The best we just had, and we just never managed to get enough. We had maybe 1 or 2, but never enough, or we'd lose 1 or 2. But that's nice balance here. Again, I can see where this is going. Your striker, Max, who is going to lead the line for this team?
Well, this is where there's a lot of options, isn't there? Obviously, my early years, which I probably don't really remember, is your likes of Mark Viduka. Then it gets into Hulse, Healy, Becchio, Beckford, Ross McCormack, Chris Wood. We've actually had quite a few strikers over the last 20 years who also, again, it's like gives you something to hold on to. But for me, I've said this so many times in this series, and I truly believe that football is about moments, and they're the things that you remember. And Beckford's goal against Man United in the FA Cup, that's, like I said, when I was younger, we didn't have Sky. We didn't have an opportunity to really go to the games. So when we were on BBC, when we were in the FA Cup and things like that, that's when you got a chance to watch Leeds. And Jermaine Beckford scoring that goal against Man United, when I grew up in an area where a lot of people are Man United fans and Liverpool fans, and nobody's really a Leeds fan. There are a few, but Beckford scoring that goal against Man United from League One Leeds, beating Man United in the FA Cup at Old Trafford, just rolling it around the goalkeeper. That's the stuff you live for as a kid. And that's exactly what happened. And that's why I've got to go for Beckford. And also, what shirt am I wearing, bruv?
What shirt am I wearing, bruv? I love
just things like that as well. And again, he stuck around Leeds afterwards. After he's retired, he stuck around Leeds and does all the stuff. And obviously he's not from Leeds originally, he's from down south. So the fact that he has such an affiliation with Leeds, even though he has gone and played for other clubs, and he's even played in the Premier League and stuff like that, it shows that how nice of a good of a club Leeds is when you're part of it. And like I say, he's stuck around, and Beckford's got to be in there for me. I think he could do that job. We'll talk about how it's going to play in a minute, but I think he can. He had the fitness to press, I think.
He did.
And to be a player who, and to be a player who was leading the line on his own. So I think I'd be taking Beckford up there.
I loved him. Absolutely loved him when he came in. He brought him in, then he went off on loan to Scunthorpe for a little bit. Did really well there, came back. I think David Sama had been in the team the year before him, I think. And then Sama got his injuries and Beckford came back in and got a spot. And my God, did he take it when he got it? And you look at his career, as you said, he went off to play for Everton. He played with Preston. He's played with other clubs as well. But he came back to Leeds when it was all done and dusted. And that's where his best years were. It was a shame we never got to the Premier League with him, but he did get his moment, in front of the fans to get Leeds out of League One. Captain deciding that game as well. Huge game considering everything that went wrong in that game with Max Grayle getting sent off and having to get something out of it. And a magic moment from him. But he had huge moments for Leeds, not just in the league, but obviously you mentioned Manchester United game as well in the cup.
Yeah.
He had some iconic. It'll always be Jermaine Beckford Day. You'll always remember what happened on Jermaine Beckford Day.
Yeah.
No one's going to forget that. So yeah, has a fantastic history with the club. He's given a lot to the club, and now he's back at the club doing the media stuff. And he's a great ambassador for Leeds. I love listening to him talking on Sky more than LUTV. I think the lads on LUTV tend to ramble a little bit. When they're on Sky. He talks so positively about Leeds. He's such a good ambassador for Leeds as a football club, and it's great to have something like that, publicly talking about your club. So yeah, that's interesting. I want to know how this team's going to play, Max. What's the style here? This is a really good side.
Yeah, so we've talked about how Phillips could drop in between the defenders, and I think when you're on the attack, there's Phillips sort of slots into the middle rather than to one side. Not necessarily as a defender, but just in front of the defense, just in front of a defensive two, whilst Byram and Dallas get high and wide to overlap Rafinha and Snodgrass. And because Rafinha and Snodgrass Rafinha's on the right, cutting onto his left, and Snodgrass is on the left, cutting in onto his right, they are going to be able to come inside then. And the wide men are actually going to be Dallas and Byram. And Rafinha and Snodgrass are going to be able to support Beckford as sort of two extra strikers, really, being able to curl the ball into the far corner with their left and right foot, respectively. Then you've got Pablo coming up behind them, who can come in and play those balls into the box. He can play them out wide. You've got Howson, who will come up and play alongside Pablo as almost a second number 10 when you're on the attack, when you're really putting teams under the cosh. Phillips goes into the middle. Those two go as like sort of two number 10s. Both of them with really good passing range, good passing ability, able to break down a defense. You've got a lot of players up, but then you've got quite good rest defense as well, because with Radaby, Janssen, and Phillips on the halfway line, or Radaby and Janssen on the halfway line with Phillips just sat in front of them in the top of the center circle, if you will. It allows then, when they do break, you've got three players back. Phillips can instantly drop into the middle of them. The other two can split slightly, and you've got three back already. And people like Rafinha, so quick. Byram and Dallas make those recovery runs. I think it would be a nice team to play that way. Obviously, when we don't have the ball, you kind of setting up in a bit of a 4-3-3 with Howson and Phillips alongside each other, and Pablo just in front with Beckford, Rafinha, and Snodgrass doing the pressing, trying to force them into a corner. And when they do get into a corner, that's when they just have to send it. But that's when you've got likes of Radaby and Janssen who win the header. You win the ball back, you go again, you attack again. So
it has a very strong look in attack of a 3-3-4 with the players that you've got when they all start to push on one by one, and you've got the wingers pushing on to give you your fullbacks pushing on to give you your width, Phillips dropping in with your back two, Pablo then pushing on, joining the attack as a natural 10. That gives you a little diamond of a front four as well. And then when you haven't got the ball, you've nearly got a 5-5-1 with a two-winger, where Rafa and Snod drop back in, and Phillips steps in, you've got that block again in the middle of the park. Very hard to break down. Good options going forward, really good options in recovery and defense. That's a good team, Max. It's a very, very, very good. How do you think this team would have done in the Championship? And then how do you think it would have done in the Premier League?
Oh, I think that it gets promoted from the Championship in any other season than maybe this one. But any other season it gets promoted. In the Premier League, I think you start to think about, you might have to replace somebody like Byram. And I don't know. Yeah, there's a few players where you might have to start thinking about replacing them if they got promoted to the Premier League. But I think this team will be capable of, all those players in their prime, I think this team will be capable of staying up in the Premier League. Not doing much more than that, but staying up. But if they were brave and if they played like that, then there's a chance, isn't there, that you get some good results against teams who aren't liking to be pressed too much. I think it stays up. I don't think it does much more than that, but I think it's got a lot of players from the Championship and League One era in it, so I think that's saying quite a lot for having them in there.
It does have players that when they were at Leeds were being looked at by Premier League clubs. Like if you go through the eras, Byram at that stage, every club in the Premier League was looking at Byram. Stuart Dallas has been looking at clubs in the Premier League since we've been in there. Janssen, we know what happened with him. Radaby the same. Calvin Phillips the same. He went off to play for Man City. Johnny Howson at his peak for Leeds was being looked at by, Norwich were a Premier League side when they bought him. Snodgrass the same thing. Rafinha, all those players, even Beckford and Pablo, like they were Premier League sides that wanted those players. Maybe wouldn't have been in the best Championship teams at the time when they were at Leeds, but they were the peak of each Leeds Championship team nearly.
Yeah.
And if you put them all together, you have a solid, I think you have a very, very solid upper mid Premier League side there. And then, yeah, just whatever your bench is going to be then to supplement that. But it's a very strong side. It's got really good balance. I love the attacking options. I'd love to watch stick Bielsa in charge of this team and see what it does. Who's your captain, Max?
See, this is a difficult one, isn't it? But I think for me, it's got to be Radaby. When you talk about experience and leadership from the back, I like a centre back to be a captain usually, to be honest, or a holding midfielder. I like somebody who can see the whole game in front of them. If you've got a striker as captain, it's kind of a token thing to say, right, they're leading by example. They're going to score you goals and it's going to make everybody more motivated. For me, I prefer a captain to be somebody who can see the whole pitch, somebody who's got a good footballing brain, can see what's ahead of them and can command people. So you look at Radaby and he'll see that there's a player trying to play off Phillips's shoulder and he's going to tell him, that player there is like, just be aware of that. Howson, drop in a little bit. You're going to have to cover this space. I like it when somebody can see the whole pitch in front of them and they can command things. I did a little bit of analysis when we signed Ampadu. I did some preseason analysis, and Ampadu would pass the ball to Meslier, then go out wide, go that way, just telling everybody around them what to do so the pressure's off. You don't have to. And Meslier took a little bit of time to trust Ampadu in telling him what to do. But either a holding midfielder or a defender, when they give you the ball and they tell you where to go, that's another player's dream, that, because the decision's already made for you. So that split second where you're thinking about it and the ball's taken off you or something like that, that doesn't happen because somebody's already told you. So somebody like Radaby, who can see everything in front of him and would be able to tell you where to drop in, where to move to, I think he'd be an excellent captain for this side.
Yeah, and you've got lots and lots and lots of backup options should you need them. There's leadership from back to front. I mean, Rafinha, I think that's it. I think Rafinha is the only one that wouldn't have captained Leeds at some point. Maybe Byram. I don't think Byram's captain Leeds. But I think outside of Rafinha and Byram, every other player on that team has captain Leeds at some point.
Yeah, which wasn't done intentionally. It's just a coincidence on the players I like.
Well, that says an awful lot. I mean, everyone who's picked their team in this series clearly has their own style that they like. They clearly have their own kind of type of player that they like. You can very clearly see what kind of player you like here at Leeds, and it's very much a run through brick walls for Leeds, and then get the 3 points. This is an excellent side, Max. Anything else you'd like to say about this team before you wrap up?
Not a massive amount. No, it just would be nice, wouldn't it, to see one of our teams actually play. Wonder if AI will get to the point in a few years where it'll look realistic and we can go back to this series and make people's dream teams and make them play against each other and see how they do.
There's a supercomputer somewhere that's done like Muhammad Ali versus Mike Tyson. You know, there's these dream matches. It'd be interesting to see. That's a really good side. This series, Max, has been a fantastic series. Just on a side note, just for myself to say, I've watched every single episode. It's a fantastic walk down memory lane, if nothing else. But it's also a really interesting insight into how Leeds fans think about their team and what kind of team each type of Leeds fan would like. And there's some similarities, but there's a lot of differences as well.
Yeah, and I think it also shows a little bit of how people got into being a Leeds fan, what era they got into being a Leeds fan, what sort of made them, what sort of players they liked. I mean, Kev from Leeds House Pod talked about how Yeboah kind of made him a Leeds fan because of watching him as a kid, and you can understand that sort of thing. But it's interesting to see because then when you watch these people do stuff on their own channels, you can say, oh yeah, that's why they became a Leeds fan or whatever. It gives you a bit of background and a bit of history and stuff. So yeah, it's been good. This is, like I say, the 10th episode. Thanks so much for interviewing me this time, Jer. Bit different, but I think it's gone quite well. So yeah, thanks for doing it. Thanks everybody for watching. And yeah, subscribe to the channel. I hope you've enjoyed this series. There may be some in the future as well, but not in the immediate term because there'll be plenty of January transfer window videos. We talked about as well how we'll look for a number 10. There'll be a video coming out tomorrow talking about a potential number 10 who's a bit of an adaptation from another position who I've sort of scouted. So look out for that one on the channel. That should be a good watch. Yeah, so thanks for watching Leeds Lately, and I'll see you in the next one.